and we're actually using UFO researchers to try to get a better idea of what was being seen out there, and maybe even try to get some of these UFO researchers to get a hold of classified information under the pretense that, hey, I'm from Russia. Well, I represent a UFO group, and let's join forces, and our two countries will discover what the reality of UFOs are together. When actually they're trying to steal classified high technology secrets. So I don't know. I mean, Lazar has for all these years, his story really hasn't changed. I mean, he hasn't embellished on it too much over the years, and he, I don't know. It's just he just seems to be fairly earnest about his experiences. But,
well, I'm not saying that he wasn't there at Area 51. What my feeling is, we don't and did not at that time frame, and I still don't think we even have the technology to back engineer it. That's my feeling.
Right.
Again, I'm just a talk show host, and just like you do, and I could be totally wrong. But I'm looking, like I mentioned earlier on the show, and I don't know if you were listening to it, but if you take a CD and you give it to a scientist back in 1959, for example, they're going to look at that, right? The first thing they're going to go, well, what type of record is this? And then they're not going to be able to decipher what's on that CD because it's digital, They have no way to take any information off of it or put information on it or even read what's on it. So they're going to sit there and look at that, and they're going to go, wow, that's a piece of plastic. What is it used for? It has grooves in it, but you can't put a needle on it. So I think they'd be baffled. I mean, for quite a few years before the technology would come up where they would know what it was. So that's all I'm saying is I think that some of the technology that's supposed to have been back engineered, from UFOs, or when we go into the kernel here, I just don't buy some of it. But then some of it I do. I do think when we get into philip-corso, I think some of this stuff has been embellished with him through the older he got.
Oh, definitely. The original book that he wrote. Now, and we're talking about the Lieutenant Colonel philip-corso, who, in 1997, released a book called The Day After Roswell, which was a bestseller. I mean, it just I don't know if there has been any other UFO related book that has sold as well as philip-corso's book. Now, in it, he states that he was part of the Army's effort to take some of the stuff that was gleaned from the crash UFO at Roswell, and to try to back engineer it and make use of it, not only for the military but also for civilian use. Now, Corso's original manuscript dealt more with his military career, and I think its original title was "He Walked with Giants," which he did. I mean, he considering, let's see, he started his military career in 1942 and it ended in 1963. So I mean, he walked and worked with a lot of very, very famous and well-known people, Eisenhower and MacArthur and people like that. Apparently, though, even though his manuscript had a lot of great information in it, it was not very well written, and Corso, of course, was computer illiterate, so a lot of it was handwritten, and other parts were sloppily typed. So the publisher was interested in the book, but they decided that they needed to bring in like a co-author, somebody who was well versed in the publishing field and could help smooth things out, and that's where Bill Burns got involved with it. And so they brought Bill Burns in, and Bill, when he was reading, and this is something that Bill has told me myself. I guess that when Bill was reading this manuscript, there was like a couple of references to the whole Roswell thing and the whole taking some of the technology that they had found to try to develop it for military and civilian use. And so Bill said to Lieutenant Colonel Corso, said, is this stuff true? Did this really happen? And Corso was like, yeah, it's the military has been involved in UFOs for a long time, but it was just a small aspect of the larger book. And so Bill said, well, that this could really be the major point, the major selling point of this book. The rest of the stuff is great, but considering that this would have been probably around 1995, 1997 was coming up. It would have been the 50th anniversary of the crash at Roswell. He says, let's make this our selling point, and we'll have a bestseller on our hands, and that's what they did. I guess that they kind of rushed the book out very quickly, which led to numerous errors. Excuse me, in this book, which a lot of the skeptics and debunkers have seized upon, and to use that as proof that. Colonel Corso was either making it all up, or he was senile, or what have you.
Or both.
Or both, right, right. But true to Bill Burns' words, though, I mean, when the book came out, it was a bombshell, and shortly around the same time, and I don't know if you remember this, the Air Force put out their own book called, I think it was like Roswell Explained. It was like it came from their publicity department, and it was it was very well done and very well researched. But I mean, they were attempting to debunk any of the Roswell stories. And that was the book where the Air Force said that witnesses may have actually have seen something, but it was probably a little later, more in the early 1950s than 1947, and it involved the Air Force using dummies that they were pushing out of airplanes with various kinds of parachutes, just to see. How well the parachutes would work, and how well the dummies would hold up if they crashed to the ground. And they said that people would see these and think that their memories would then say, oh well, these years later, the whole faulty memory theory that these were extraterrestrial bodies from a crashed UFO. So, I mean, here you have the day after Roswell, and then the Air Force's explanation. So, Roswell was really big in 1997, and Bill Burns and Colonel Corso, became very well known, very successful because of this book.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he did a lot. I mean, if you go back to his military career, when he joined the Army in 1942, I mean, he served in the intelligence in Europe. I mean, he in counterintelligence in Rome. And then in 1945, he arranged for safe passage for over 10,000 Jews from World War II. I mean, the guy, served with Douglas MacArthur. I mean, he had a reputation. But during the Korean War, he back in 92 even, he was talking about there was prisoners from the Korean War. It was still held. And I guess, tell me if I'm wrong, but Senator John McCain really dismissed him as, kind of like a crackpot on national TV.
I think that there was a concerted effort after he came out with his claims, especially from members of the military, to basically just to say that none of this happened, and this guy is crazy. It could have also have been that these people were told by the military, you need to say this, you need to discredit Colonel Corso because he's getting too much attention. Part of signing that that non-disclosure agreement that every military person has to sign, one time or another, and I mean, like officers have to sign at one time or another, means that not only can't you talk about what happened to you, during your career, but if we come to you later in life and say you need to say this or don't say this, even if you're retired, you're still obligated to do it.
Oh yeah.
If you want to continue getting your military pension, especially, I think that Colonel Corso definitely ruffled some feathers. Well, I mean, all through his career, Colonel Corso and some others that he was associated with made some fairly major enemies. I mean, you have to remember that Colonel Corso was part of Army intelligence, and when you are in that line of work, a lot of secrets. A lot of other people's secrets, and you are going to make people mad at you throughout your career. Corso and Trudeau and some of the others that he worked with were extremely concerned about Russia and the possible communist uprising, not only in Europe but also infiltration here in the United States. And this group felt like the FBI and the CIA and some of these other government agencies were being too lax on how possible infiltration was developing in the United States. I guess that J. Edgar Hoover really disliked Colonel Corso, and I guess there's a number of citations and notes in Hoover's personal notes and memoirs that have been uncovered over the years after he died, that basically just says that Colonel Corso is what they call him is like he's a rat, and I guess that Hoover felt that Corso would take other people's work and claim it as his own, but some of the major reasons that the FBI felt this way about Corso was that Corso felt that the FBI wasn't doing enough, like I said earlier, about possible communist infiltration in the country. He also felt that, say, like the JFK assassination. Now, Corso, early on, I mean, even before other JFK assassination researchers glommed onto this, Colonel Corso said that Lee Harvey Oswald